I'm the chairman of the Adam Smith Society. You can bet it's an institution devoted to the spread of classic liberal principles. I have decided that speaking about regulations that affect the internal market, the European market, and the European firms, small and medium firms, one important aspect is certainly regulations affecting international trade. As you know, Europe, one of the competencies that are exclusive of Europe is international trade. And the negotiations regarding the TTIP have put again this issue on the forefront of the public debate. So here you have a snapshot of all the regulations that affect European firms and enterprises, but then we have international trade. The most important negotiation in course is the TTIP with the United States. Unfortunately, as it is evident, the negotiations are stalling. And there are different forces working against them. On the one side, there is political uncertainty in the United States. Both major candidates are against the TTIP. They are against even the Pacific Treaty, which is lighter. So they are. I don't think that Trump even knows about the existence of the TTIP, but Mrs. Clinton certainly does, and she has, as in many other occasions, switched her position, and now she's against. So there is political uncertainty in the US, and in Europe, there is some widespread opposition from some sectors of the public opinion. Different countries have different views on the advantages of the treaty itself. And notwithstanding the fact that it is the EU negotiating the TTIP, the fundamental mistake to have promised that any single European Parliament will vote on the approval of the treaty is today an obstacle that risks to be unsurmountable. While, on the other hand, the basic rule should be that only the European Parliament should vote on international trade treaties. So, what are the benefits of the TTIP? Why is it so important? Well, obviously, for any believer on free trade, every treaty that opens up a market is beneficial, but especially this one has several points that are important for European firms. The most important one, apart from, generally speaking, reducing red tape and cost and so on, but the most important one is that it should open up public procurement in the US. While European laws, generally speaking, are more open to the participation of international firms to public bids, and then we have the rule that every European company is allowed to participate in any public bid. This is not true in the US. So many public bids in the US are closed. There are clauses that favor not only at the North American level. As you know, the US are part of the NAFTA treaty, but also only American firms. This is an obstacle because European companies, especially in some areas like public utilities, are state-of-art companies that could easily penetrate the US market. So the opening up of public procurement rules is a clear advantage for Europe, while European markets should not suffer too much from that, just because we are already accustomed to competition, because we already compete among our 28 countries. Another very important issue dealt with by the treaty would be the standards. As you know, for many products, you have very similar products that have slightly different standards that raise import and export costs. The most common example, which is often quoted, is that of the auto industry. So you have cars that are similar, that have the same performances, but then you cannot export BMWs and Mercedes in the US. You wouldn't export anyway Fiat, but you can export Alfa Romeo, and then now Fiat has Chrysler, so it has remedied to the problem without adjusting these cars, that generally speaking are perfectly safe, to American standards that are quite different, or they are slightly different, but the addition of the requirements asked for by the US laws is expensive. So makes the price of the foreign cars less competitive. So this is another area of improvement. And a third one for Europe and Italy in particular, but for Europe by and large, is that of food. One of the urban legends that circulate, especially on social networks, is that the TTIP would open the European market to OGM products. Putting aside the fact that I am very much in favor of OGM products, but this is not even true. OGM are excluded from TTIP, and the European Commission has made very clear, and this is something which also responds to some US preoccupations, because often the preoccupations are similar. The US don't want to be invaded by unsafe European products, and the Europeans don't want to be invaded by US unsafe products. So the final result is that both are not invaded by the safe products of both countries. That regulations regarding health and safety are going to stay in place. And also the so-called principle of precaution is going to stay in place. The principle of precaution is a double-edged sword, because sometimes there is too much precaution, as Cécile has just explained to us with the examples regarding the company that we are assisting here in Europe. So, what would be the final result? First of all, increase competitiveness, which is good per se. For those of us who have read some masters of thought like Friedrich von Hayek, we all know that competition is a way to spread knowledge. And the fact that you spread knowledge, the fact that you imitate your better competitor, is a way to improve also your performances. And if you improve your performances, someone else will improve his performances. And that would bring to better products, better choice, and lower prices. So increasing competitiveness is good per se, especially in this country. We always had this problem that different governments of different colors have protected the losing side of the industry to save jobs, with the final result that we have saved the losers, we have not nurtured the winners, and we have lost jobs anyway. Open up services. Services it's a very important sector of economy. Well, generally speaking, European economies are 70% services, and the US even more, probably 75%. And the services market is not as open as the product market. Why? Well, because for services, what it is important is the non-tariff barriers. While for products, what it is really important is the tariff barriers, which are already low, just because we all belong to WTO. Non-tariff barriers, which are important for products, the examples of cars is one that demonstrates it, but are very important for services, because you are an architect, you are an engineer, so you probably, if you graduated from the University of Heidelberg or the University of Nice, you are perfectly suitable to operate in the US. But if there is no recognition of your degree, or if to operate as a service provider in a different country you need special permissions and other, then of course this makes everything more difficult. And opening up the services market is essential. Financial services are going to be regulated still. So I just pick up some other issues. Well, lowering of European standards. We already described what are the precautions that are going to be taken by the European Commission. This one is important. How to solve disputes. There has been a lot of opposition, especially in Europe, about the so-called ISDS, which is the International Dispute Settlement System, that is envisaged by the TTIP. Why? Because it is said that it is a sort of private mechanism, which would work with international consultants, mainly lawyers. And the suspicion is that lawyers as private practitioners would tend to favor companies and firms vis-à-vis the governments. Well, first of all, I think that this is a misplaced worry, just because the mechanism is very simple. It's like in any arbitration court. One party appoints its judge, the other party appoints its judge, and the two judges appoint the third one. So there is complete fairness. The real worry is that the decisions of this court will affect the capability of the states to implement regulations, for instance, health and safety regulations, that appear to be contrary to the free trade principles that are contained in the treaty. But again, it is not a question of the working of the international courts, but it's a question of substance. Anyway, that would be very easy to solve. Europe has just signed the CETA, that the free trade agreement with Canada, that the European Parliament is going to vote in December, I think, or something like that, which provides for dispute resolution system which is fair. The treaty sets up a special court with judges that are appointed by the two parties, and for every single dispute, the judges are picked up by the pool of judges appointed by the two different parties. So you adopt just the CETA system, and that is not anymore an issue. Then there is an issue of transparency, which is especially a US issue, because now the documents regarding the treaty are visible for European MPs and also for national MPs. There is a lot of publicity. It is difficult to find any aspect that has not been discussed about the TTIP. Finally, the EU trade policy. Here, what it is important to understand is that the TTIP is not the end of the world. Europe is engaged in several negotiations, not only the CETA, which hopefully will be approved by the European Parliament, but also with Japan. Here it is the share of the world trade. The EU share, unfortunately, is going down, is the red line, and it is not going down further, mainly thanks to Germany. But again, trade is essential for Europe, because trade is essential for countries that export know-how and that produce sophisticated products, because raw materials, raw goods, I mean, they are very easy. You don't have non-tariff barriers for oil. You have a price. You have a price or tariffs. Or you don't have non-tariff barriers for zinc or whatever. So lowering barriers is important for sophisticated economies, and this is the reason why for Europe completing the negotiations that are in course with Japan, starting the negotiation with China, completing the negotiation with Latin America, the Mercosur Treaty, is as important as any other policy that can be envisaged by the Commission or the national governments. Thank you for your attention.